Hi, Shalom Chaverim. Did you ever play the game Geography? I know when I was growing up in the car on long journeys, this was very popular in our family, and someone would throw out a question, who knows where Kenya is? And then someone would have to say, the borders of Kenya. Sometimes it was more local. How many states begin with the letter N? And so on. I must confess I was never very good at geography. And I would always try to justify my ignorance by saying, well, how am I supposed to know? I never visited there. But if we're on the subject of confession, I might as well add a confession. There are places which I visit often. In fact, there's one place in particular I'm thinking about. I'm there quite often, and for the life of me, I really can't place it. I don't know the borders. I don't know which countries are closest to it. I don't even know the language people speak or the currency that is used. What's even more surprising is my ignorance is not limited to me. I bet you've visited the same place I have, and you're not any clearer in these questions. Well, you might think, what am I referring to? And yes, I am kidding you. I'm referring to a place called Nowhere. Now, bear with me. There is no place called Nowhere. But let's develop this together a little bit. We use nowhere as a real place. For example, you're driving down a street and you're following all of the protocols and you're looking in your rear view mirrors and you put on your blinkers and you get into an accident. And the insurance adjuster asks you, were you aware? Were you distracted? No, I was not. Did you break any laws? No, I did not. So how'd you get into an accident? You just throw up your hands and you say, I don't know, he came out of nowhere. He came out of nowhere. Where is nowhere? Right, left, up, back, north, east? Where is nowhere? Well, ask a kid, Billy, how come you showed up late? Oh, where were you? I was nowhere. Sometimes we're very sure of where we put something. So I'll open up my drawer. I'm sure I put my keys in this dresser, but it's nowhere. So I'm actually saying it is somewhere, but where is that somewhere? Nowhere. I actually think nowhere is a code. What we really mean to say is God, who is everywhere, is involved in this moment. But instead of saying the word God, we use the word nowhere. You see, if I could predict where I'm going, then and I see an obstacle in front of me, I wouldn't say that obstacle came from nowhere. I see it through the front windshield. But when I don't see it coming, and I don't anticipate it, suddenly, and it hits me, whether it be figuratively or literally, then I begin to say to myself, this is not my plan. Then why did it happen? Or from where is it coming? What's the origin? And instead of saying the word God, I say nowhere. You know, they say that there was one boy that nudged his daddy. Daddy, where's God? And daddy would always say, everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And the kid wasn't happy. He wanted to be shown where God is. So the father got a little frustrated and said, my dear son, go to bed with the question of where is God? And when you will wake up, maybe God will answer you with a note underneath your pillow. And the kid was very excited. God is everywhere. Sure, he could write me a note. That night, the father wrote, God is nowhere. Stuck it underneath the pillow and figured that would be something that would certainly cause his child to stop badgering him. Kid wakes up, brushes his teeth, comes down to the breakfast table in a very good mood. Father says, did you get an answer from God? He said, as a matter of fact, I did. And the father says, and what did God answer? He says, it was great. God answered, God is now here. Instead of reading he is nowhere, he read it as N-O together with the W. God is here now in this moment. They tell the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, was a firm advocate of the notion that God is here and now, and actually he relates to us. In one of the very famous episodes concerning his students. Once the Baal Shem Tov was together with his students in a house of study. Late afternoon, there's a knock on the door, and a peasant sticks his head in, and he says, in Polish, he says to the rabbis, "I have a carriage, it is stuck in the mud, I need manpower, I need muscle power, please come and help me." And these learned people were very, very strong in their mind and spirit, but did not have great muscles. So they said, "We can't. We don't have the strength." And he looked at them fiercely, and he said, you can, you just don't want." And angrily, he slammed the door. They didn't really put too much stock to his anger. They understood his frustration. But the Baal Shem Tov was deep in thought, and he said, "Did you hear what he said? Did you hear the lesson? Did you hear what God's telling us?" They looked at their Rebbe, what are you talking about? God is telling us this, there's a peasant outside who has his wagon stuck in mud. He said, "There's a message over here. God is telling you, you can, but you don't want. You can get out of your own mud, but you just don't want. You can accomplish seemingly the impossible, you just don't want. If you had a strong will, you would be able to do it." Now, I'd like to read into the story a little bit that the students, if you would have asked them to predict the next 45 minutes, they would say, "We are studying Torah," and their prediction would include questions and answers, perhaps a comment or a incisive insight from a teacher. They never would have predicted that in the middle of their study, a Polish peasant would come in and challenge them to lift something out of the mud. So where did that come from? That came from nowhere, which the Baal Shem Tov understood that came from the Almighty. It's very, very clear that this is a message. So if you're talking to your neighbor and you're having a heated debate about politics, and in the middle of the conversation, he says, "You know, Billy's mother has cancer," you just stop saying, "Where did that come from? Left field? It came from nowhere. Why? What does it have to do with our conversation?" And the other one says, I don't know, I just thought I'd tell you. In the middle of this conversation, it came out of nowhere. Maybe it's a challenge. Maybe it's a message. Maybe God, who is everywhere, wanted you to hear this. So this location called Nowhere, I visited many times. But now I actually know where that nowhere is coming from. It's coming from the Almighty. Let's listen carefully to what is being told to us, and let's experience the nowheres of life. If we will experience it and internalize it, I am sure it will lead a direction to actually where we should be heading and where we should be going. Shalom.